Well, we asked Globesite's executive director, Taufiq Rahim, what he thought the defining events of 2013 were, and asked him to predict how world politics would be shaped this year.
Definitely the interim agreement between Iran and global powers is the most salient development in the latter part of this year, and it will carry on into 2014. Basically, the US and the Europeans, the P5+1 group, are looking to make a comprehensive deal with Iran, not just on the nuclear program, but on other issues as well. And for Iran, they hope that that will lead to sanctions relief. That will definitely be an ongoing set of negotiations that will continue to define not only regional peace and security, but global peace and security.
That was going to be my next question. This obviously has huge implications on the Middle East as well.
Well, most immediately, the Geneva Conference, the Geneva II Conference, will be occurring in the latter part of January, involving representatives of the Syrian regime, opposition, and other countries in the region, as well as global powers, to see if there is some type of progress that can be made on that conflict. So Iran's rapprochement with the West allows them to perhaps participate, although that's still unclear, in the surrounding negotiations around Syria. That's for starters. Then we have the situation in Iraq. Iraq in 2013 was the most deadly it's been since 2008. And I don't expect that to change in 2014. Again, the rapprochement with Iran and the role that Saudi Arabia plays will be instrumental in seeing whether Iraq continues to go on the deadly path that it's on, or there is any type of pullback. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to end anytime soon.
Now, talk about Syria. The situation there has been really volatile. Things have been changing almost every month, and there seems to be no end in sight.
No end in sight. And while there are talks upcoming in Geneva, and Bashar al-Assad, for example, is reconstituting a lot of his power, this only means that there will be more extreme actions in his opposition as they become marginalized, and groups like Al-Qaeda and Al-Qaeda-linked groups try to play a much more influential role, as we're seeing happening. That might mean that in 2014, in the first 6 months, rather than the death toll climbing down, we might have an escalation of the death toll. That can escalate even further in the coming months, and the international community really needs to be vigilant and be proactive in finding a solution.
Apart from a solution, it's also turning out to be one of the biggest humanitarian crises of all times. You're talking about a huge number of refugees as well.
Yeah, I mean, we are talking about refugee and internally displaced population approaching 10 million in 2014. And if you think about the Syrian population just being somewhere around 22 to 25 million people, you're reaching almost half of the population perhaps in 2014 being displaced or refugees, which is something unheard of. It really is becoming the largest humanitarian crisis, of course, in the 21st century, but really one of the largest since World War II itself.
Let's talk about the situation in Egypt. Even that's been so volatile now. A government that was elected democratically is now being declared a terrorist organization. What exactly is in store for Egypt in 2014?
Well, Egypt is in an extremely volatile state. On one hand, General Sisi and Adli Mansour, who's the nominal president, and the other figures that have risen to power post the coup or military takeover in June, are consolidating their grip on power. Even though that's happening, under the surface, given, as you said, the Brotherhood has been declared a terrorist entity, and there is a crackdown on them, this might lead to underlying volatility that could emanate in ways that we haven't seen before in the last 2-3 years. We could start seeing low-level civil strife in broader parts of Egypt beyond the Sinai if there is the continued exclusion and crackdown on the Muslim Brotherhood and its supporters.
On to a little uplifting news now. The UAE won the Expo. Everyone is very buoyant. A lot of hopes pinned on the development that the Expo will bring. What's in store for the UAE this year?
Well, definitely for the UAE, 3 years after the Arab awakening or spring, it is even more so the oasis, not just in a desert, but in a desert on fire. And here is Dubai and the UAE succeeding and thriving and growing, and with people from across the region and the world coming here. And that definitely is a very interesting story. Of course, there's many pitfalls that Dubai itself has to look for, given that it's driving a lot of growth right now with the Expo victory, and that is to do with not entering into a bubble once again as it was in 2007 and 8. But all indications is that there's a lot of development and investment and infrastructure development occurring right now, both linked to Expo 2020 and that awarding, but also with its own strategic plan.
Any other significant developments that you think we should be looking out for?
One final thing I would say is that 2014 will be interesting to see the role Russia plays and tries to assert itself. While they're hosting the Winter Olympics in 2014 in Sochi, and it's not the Summer Olympics like 2008 in Beijing, for Russia it very much sees this as a political moment. It sees it as a way to assert its role on the global stage. And if you look at the past few years, they've been in a way victorious on issues like Syria in their mind. Whether that is a good thing or a bad thing for global peace and security is another issue. But Vladimir Putin has, re-emerged on the scene and is playing a critical role. And in the lead up to the Winter Olympics, they've been releasing opposition politicians, the members of a prominent band that were detained. And so in that sense, they're looking forward to really announcing their presence and asserting their role coming into 2014.